Toward three, toward three, toward three. Bingo.
All righty. Good evening. For any of you that don't know me, my name's Les Haight. My wife and I were in the nursery business for 35 years. Over that period of time, we sold somewhere between 60 and 70,000 roses. So we had a lot of experience, a lot of successes, and occasionally a few failures. So you learn from your mistakes. And I've been doing this little dog and pony show for what to do in your garden now for about 15 years. Right now, the main thing in your garden is going to be fertilizing, and that's 90% of what you need to be doing right now. Our temperatures are doing the usual February, March thing. 85 tomorrow, 65 on Monday or something like that. All over the place. The wind really dehydrates that new, nice kind of purpley, pinky foliage that comes out. So make sure your roses are well watered. Well watered means deeply watered, not just a little bit of water every day. I still wash my roses off every morning. Just go out and give them a quick wash down. Keeps the dust off of them. Keeps the plants hydrated a little bit. It's not considered a watering. It's just a moistening them down. Moistens the soil. But anytime you are watering, be sure in deep water. You're trying to get the water to go down 2 feet.
Wow.
Or more. If you have a drip system and you're putting a half a gallon of water on your roses, you might as well not bother. It's a waste of time. Right now, I'm watering, all my roses are in big pot, 24-inch pots, and I'm watering about every 3 days right now. And it depends a little bit on the wind, 3 to 4 days, temperatures. We had down 31 degrees 2 nights ago and 85 tomorrow or something, so just crazy. I fertilize mostly with Magnum Grow. There's a can of it back on the back table there. It's a great water-soluble fertilizer that was developed just for roses, although it works really well for almost anything. If you've got potted petunias or geraniums or pansies or anything like that, it works really well with them. And I use it about every 10 to 14 days. And I've had very good results with it. I've been using it almost, not exclusively, but as my main fertilizer for probably the last 12 or 15 years.
How do you apply it? Do you put
I
in
am-
gallon of water first, or
I am lazy. Sprinkle and take the hose and wash it in.
okay, that's the way I do it.
I don't think I need to be accurate enough to put the little tablespoon in a gallon and fill it up and pour it around. I'm not interested in taking that much time. And I don't have very many roses anymore, but it's just sprinkle a little handful around and wash it in. And my roses are all in big pots, 24-inch pots. And I like those because I can control the watering better, I can control the fertilizing. You don't have to worry about what's in the ground outside of the area that you've prepared for your bed. Whether it's nothing but sand if you're near a wash, or whether you're in a bed of caliche that looks like that table. You never you can control the pots much better. You got any question?
What is this, a quiet bunch?
Oh, man.
Come on, stump the panel.
Yeah, I think they got too much dessert in their mouths or something.
When do you start spraying for insects? I already have aphids.
Wow.
Now?
I do
Yeah.
too. I do too.
I haven't seen any. I do very little spraying. If I have just aphids, I use a product called Tempo. You have to buy it online. It's an artificial pyrethrin. Pyrethrin is an organic chemical. Kills a huge range of insects. It can be used in daycare centers, kitchens, you know, it's an artificial form. It's of pyrethrin, it comes from chrysanthemums. I read through it. Yes.
The thing that I'm concerned about, and I can't address technically, but a lot of those sprays are very hard on the bees, and the bees are our pollinators.
Right.
And I think, quite honestly, my preference is protect the bees.
Right.
The roses, so be it.
Yeah, and most of the time aphids, if you don't know what aphids are, on roses they're usually green. Little soft-bodied insects with wings. On oleanders they're yellow, on other things they're black, brown, all different flavors. But most of the time you can just control them by washing them off with a hard stream of water. They can fly, but if you blow them off there, it's still a long way back up. And the thing that's weird about aphids is they can have live birth and lay eggs both. So they're very prolific once they get going.
Bastards.
Yeah, I once saw, I have a picture somewhere that I'd probably never find again of a rose bud that was completely encrusted with green aphids. It looked like an old moss rose, one of the old moss roses. It would, because there were so many aphids on it, so. But I'm surprised that there's that many this early. Yes?
Can you spell that product that you bought online?
Tempo, Tempo.
Tempo, okay,
or
thank you.
Tempo. And it's, I think it's Tempo EC. And nobody here in town carries it. And it sounds scary price-wise. It's like $45 for a 10-ounce bottle, but you only use 8 milliliters per gallon, which is like a third of a teaspoon. Or, I mean, it's a third of an ounce, so it's very small.
And you just put in a spray bottle and
Yep, yep. And if you don't have a whole lot of issues, just get a quart trigger sprayer like you do if you're gonna do your ironing, and just mix up whatever small amount you need and just spray it on stuff. And you could probably hold the spray in the shade if the temperatures aren't too high for maybe 4 or 5 days. But generally with sprays, you should use them right after you mix them up. Don't let them sit. A lot of them start to deteriorate, especially fungicides. They deteriorate very, very rapidly. All right.
very
Bill and
curious
Don and
bunch.
Dina are going to show you pictures.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Vice President, you get to do the introductions.
Oh, I forgot I was vice president. You know, we decided we would do, oh, I'm sorry, got here, okay.
There you go.
Okay, we decided we'd do a talk about rose photography a long time ago, and we thought it'd be perfect for people that want to enter photographs for the rose show coming up in April, and give you some pointers as far as how to do it, whether you have a really expensive camera or whether you have a cell phone, which may be expensive too, but a cell phone will do multiple things. So anyway, we've got 2 different people that I'm gonna talk about the expensive cameras, and then Donaldina's gonna talk about expensive cell phones. So Donaldina, if you don't know about her, she's one of the elite judges in the country as far as horticulture and photography. And she has won a bunch of different photography awards.
And arranging.
Oh, and arranging too, you're right. And she goes to not only national conventions, but international ones. She goes all over the world. And you want to ask her about anything in the world regarding roses, ask Donaldina. She is really,
She's been
really
there.
I don't know.
But anyway, as far as photography specifically, she is really well versed on nationally what they're doing as far as rules, and she's going to tell you how to take photographs with cell phones and all the little apps that you might be able to use that you can find in your cell phone to get great pictures that pop. So, Donaldina, John.
Thank you.
You're famous.
Is this the spot?
That's it.
Hi, I'm Donaldina, and I'll just tell you a little bit about how I got into this, which I really didn't intend to. Even as a kid, I didn't have a brownie. I wasn't that interested in photography. And then lo and behold, I'm a rose horticulture judge, arrangement judge, and the higher-ups decided we're gonna have rose photography. And they said, Donaldina's a really good photographer. They didn't know what they were talking about. I never took a picture of a rose my whole life up to that point. So I decided I needed to get educated. And if you know anything about Green Valley, they have Green Valley Recreation. Joanne belongs, or she lives in Green Valley. They have all different kinds of clubs. Plus they have a camera club, or they call it photography club now. And every year they have a 10-week digital camera class. I took that class 6 times. And I hope I learned enough. I didn't learn everything, but the teachers were great. They were past photography instructors, either in high school, college level, professionally. So I learned a lot, and the 6 times I took it, each time was different. They had different teachers. So that's where I based my photography education, was from Green Valley, and they have one of the largest photography camera clubs in the US. They have over 900 members, and I think it's because of the snowbird population. So that's a little bit of my background. But this is a hobby. Don't take it real seriously, even though we have a book of rules and guidelines. You know, it's have fun. That's the main thing. But before you even get to the photos and taking pictures, you have a tool called the camera. And the camera is your paintbrush. It is the way you're going to create the beautiful rose pictures that you're going to exhibit. So know your camera, know your tool inside and out. Learn about all the different modes and all the different little things it can do. It can adjust your lighting, it can adjust all kinds of things. It can adjust your background, and it can get rid of a lot of little things that you don't want in the picture. So it's not really the camera. You can buy an expensive camera like that, but some of the phones probably cost just as much as that camera nowadays. But the phone camera can be more than just a camera. It's your phone too, plus maps and all kinds of other things. But so don't get camera envy, you know, just go with what you have. And I have never had one of those fancy cameras. I never wanted one because I didn't want it. It's heavy, right? And I didn't want to drag it all over the world with me. I just wanted something I could put in my pocket. So most of the time I've only had a point and shoot, and now exclusively I just use my phone. And the phones nowadays, I have an iPhone 10. I think they're up to 13, and I think some of them say they have 3 cameras, you know, which I don't know how to use. So you learn how to use it. I don't know if a manual's available, but you can go online, I'm sure, and find out how to use them. And there are cell phone camera classes that I've heard about. I think one was offered on Facebook. And I knew somebody who took one of those classes, and she was a really good photographer, but she specialized in cell phone photography. So she used a lot of that information. And I don't know how long the class was, but I think it was about $100. And she said it was excellent. So if you can find that on Facebook somewhere, I haven't seen the guy advertise recently. But, so there's a lot of information out there. So anyway, that's the camera, and so you can use any camera, and it's not the camera that makes the picture, it's you. So, and then we go on to guidelines and rules. I don't know if any of you know that this exists. There is also guidelines and rules for horticulture and arrangements. But this one was revised, this is the second one, in 2020. And it goes through all kinds of things. Let's see. You can download it from the ARS website, which is it's rose.org. And go to, I have all my notes here. Go to education and then go to publications, and you will find this one, you find the CR manual and the other 2 manuals that I talked about. And it's yours for free. If you want to download it to your computer. but you probably don't want to print out all 59 pages. You don't want to know how to organize a rose photography rose show at the national level. But you probably want to know about how the judges judge it, and this is the book. You want to know common phrases that are defined, such as depth of field, exposure, they're explained in here. You might want to know about disqualifications and penalizations, so you don't fall into that trap. There are a few rules for disqualification. You have to know the name of the rose, and there are different kind of places you can find the name that the rose goes by for entering, and this is one of them. And if you're an ARS member, you get this handbook every year. They take a survey of the whole United States and compile it into this handbook, and they grade the roses from, excellent down to poor, so you can look up a rose. Not all roses grow in all areas of the United States. So, don't fall into the trap. You're at Home Depot and you see this rose and it's $9.99, that's a really good deal, But that rose may not like the heat we have here. Most of them don't, actually. So there are other things in here you may want to know. You may want to know how the judges score a rose. So this is point scoring, and what the points mean. There's 100 points, and they divide up into conformance, specific sections, meaning if it's a rose or a spray, which class they belong in, composition, technique, they give points to all of these, adding up to 100. We don't always point score an exhibit. At the national level, there are some classes where it's demanded, that's what we have to do. So you might want to know about that. And then the prime elements of photography judging, you definitely want to know that. And what the judges look for when they're looking at your photo or your whatever exhibit you have. So this, like I said, is free on the ARS Road site called rose.org. And you go to education, then you go to publications, and this will download, and you can download it into your computer for free. Or you can pay $13.50 like I did and have the ARS printed out for you, because my printer doesn't work right. Anyway, okay, the next thing is the schedule. And this is your next most important item. Actually, it's the law. This is a 2016 rose schedule from Tucson. And they're divided into sections, and you go to the photography section, and it will have the rules for this particular show. There might be some rules that actually will supersede the rules in here. Every rose show is a little bit different. There is a rule in this book that says only outdoor roses may be exhibited. No florist roses, no roses from Safeway or any other place, even though you may not have any, and those look pretty good, but they're not allowed. But in this one rose show that I judged, they had a class for arrangements using florist roses, and they had some pretty nice arrangements. Some people may not have any roses, don't grow roses, but would like to make a rose arrangement for this particular show. So that was allowed only in that show. I don't know that we have any unusual
No, it just
rules.
has to
I
be
think
outdoor.
most of them follow the guidelines for the different sections.
And I believe the schedule is now posted on the website.
Oh, it is?
So if you go to the rosesocietytucson.org and click on the show cover, and it'll open up the show schedule. And you can go through and see the horticulture, arrangements, and photography at the back.
No, that'll give you a jump ahead, be able to read the schedule before the day of the show or before the night before. So that is your rule book. This is your Bible. This is what you go by. And it has all the rules in here. Some of the ones I named for, disqualification and that type of thing. So the next thing is your camera. And like I said, I use only my cell phone. And did you know that there are photo editing tools on your phone? Did anybody know that? Well,
No.
yeah, and you can use it, so you go to find a photo, I mean, you can do all kinds of things. Here's a picture of a rose with a bug on it that eats my roses every year, and hit edit. And my phone's not very big, and I got a phone this size, not the largest size, so I can put it in my pocket wherever I go. So it's usually on me somewhere, and when you're flying or you're in a big park somewhere, I don't have to carry that big thing around. And plus all the lenses that you might want to use. So here you have your rose picture, and there's all kinds of tools down here. I don't know what this is. You have to play around with it. Each phone is different. Each company is different. So just play around with it. You can turn the rose 360 degrees around. You can change the lighting. You can change this rose to a black and white rose. You can crop it. I mean, there's all kinds of things just on your phone. You don't have to buy anything else. But I will give you 2 apps that, and I got a shock today, 2 apps that I've used. One is called Touch Retouch, all one word. And it will help you erase telephone lines, which I did in pictures of your garden, telephone poles, holes in roses, spots, all kinds of little things like that. I haven't tried it on a big thing. I think I removed the flagpole one time. And so that's Touch Retouch. And that used to be $1.99. It is now $3.99, but now you can download it to your phone or your iPad, and I have it on my iPad. And you know, when you take a picture on your phone, if you have a link to your iPad or your computer, your photos will automatically go to that other device, and so you'll get a bigger picture. This is a little bit hard to work with, especially when you're gonna want to take out a stem here or a leaf there. You know, it's really difficult, yes.
One thing about the Apple phones, be aware of the format. If you have it in the square format or portrait or something like that, if it's a square, you can't make it into a rectangular. It's gonna stay a square, because I had a photograph blown up into a frame and it was like, well, you have it in the square format. I said, yes, I know. He said, well, I can't put it in an 8x10. And I'm like, ew. But luckily he had a frame that was perfectly
Yeah.
square.
And also for our rose show, there is a size limit. It can be as small as 5x7, 5x7,
I
and
believe
then
so.
8x10. 8x10 always wins over a smaller one. So, you know, unless you really, really have to, and I don't know that, you know, there's a circumstance where you can't blow it up to an 8x10, that will always show better. And, okay, that was one that you have to pay for. And another app is called Snapseed, all one word, and it's free. I haven't used that a whole lot, but another photographer in Southern California, Sally Long, who's an expert photographer, recommends that, and it's free. But it's different from Touch Retouch.
And how do you spell that?
Snap, S-N-A-P, Seed, S-E-E-D, all one
Seed.
word.
Okay.
Yeah, Snapseed. So, yeah. So when you're taking a picture, take your time, you know, look through the lens or whatever you're looking through, and frame the picture. There's always something that I miss. There will be a stem or a petal that's, you know, has disease on it. Actually, recently I just saw a picture that had a petal that had a fungal growth that we don't have here. But you can use the Touch Retouch and just use the eraser tool and touch it, and it will just go away, and it won't leave a white spot or a black spot. It'll blend in whatever the color is surrounding it. So, you know, it's just like it's an eraser. So that's a really handy tool, and it makes your exhibit a lot nicer to look at instead of one beautiful one that Lou's gonna show. If that had some black spots on it, it wouldn't be as beautiful, you know, it would be distracting. And that's another thing, distractions. Even though you have the beautiful rose off to the side, not dead center, there might be a stem or a dead rows even in the background that you didn't notice when you took the picture. You know, that's why you should take a breath and look at what you really have. But with that retouch, you might be able to take it out. So that, you know, you can't go back and retake the picture, especially if you were in Japan and took it, you know. So that's another thing, is we look for distractions, especially, you know, if it draws your eye away from the bloom, and then it gets points off. And it might make a difference between a blue and a red. So you want to be able to catch those. You know, sometimes it's something like maybe you can't do anything about, like a really shiny leaf in one corner. And I think I had a stem coming out of the bloom. It looked like it was coming out of its head. And I was able to erase it, because it was a different color too. But it just took on the green of the foliage around it, so it wasn't distracting. So you have to look for those distractions that will distract the judge also. So that would be, you know, points off. And be aware, I don't know if there's this common rule called the rule of 9. You divide the screen up into 9 squares, and at the apex of each of those lines is the most visually pleasing place to put your focus. Not right in the middle, which a lot of judges call the floating head. We don't want the floating heads. And another thing that's rather new, and it never really bothered me a whole lot, is do not cut any of the petals off the edge. So be careful when you're having your photo printed out that you leave enough margins for when you mat it, because it's going to cover some of the edges of the photo, that you leave enough room so you're not cutting off the petals. And that was a big thing with some of the judges. It didn't really bother me that much, but in some instances it would, you know, if you see half of the bloom gone because you had it over too much to one side.
Will you
And that-
explain the matting process for people who want to enter the show?
Well, there's different ways to mat. We require, and most road shows require, in order to exhibit your photo, the mat be the backing be no bigger than 11 by 14, and then the mat on top can be almost any size and shape on the inside. So you might have an oval picture, and that can be any size that will fit within that 11 by 14 mat. And it can be, you know, almost any shape. It can be landscape or portrait, but it has to be within that. And don't try to be cheap, but you can. If you go to Joann's or Michael's, they have a package of 11 by 14, and it's not as hard as cardboard, but it's stiff enough that'll give your photo sturdiness, and you won't be able to see through it. Sometimes some road shows have their displays where there's a window behind it, and the sun shines through, and that's not really a good look. It detracts from your photo. So we don't want that either. So those are some of the things that the judges look for. And, okay, so I think that's all I have to say. Do you have any questions? And if you have any questions, give me a call. Yeah.
Where do you get them printed?
Where do I get a what?
Where do you get your photos printed at?
You
were
know,
saying
I
there's a-
used to do it at Costco, but I think I told you I just discovered Costco doesn't have a photography department anymore. So I guess they suggest any Walgreens or even Walmart.
Target too.
Target.
Go to Target.
Oh, okay, yeah. So unless you have a real expensive printer. You know, when I belonged to the camera club, they had their own printers and I used to print them there, but I haven't done one in a while. I was looking for the photography department at Costco, and to my horror, it wasn't there. And I asked and they said, oh, we don't have it anymore. So, okay, if you have any questions and you think of one later, you can give me a call.
Can I
think
look
you,
at the rose pamphlet?
pardon?
Can I look at the rose book?
Yeah, you wanna look at this? Oh, the handbook, there's no pictures in there.
There's no pictures?
No.
The few little tiny pictures.
There's advertisement. No, it's all, you know, graded to the class of the road.
Come to the rose show.
Sorry about that. I just didn't want to. So if you go to the district website and click on the photography page, there is a list of 14 tips written by Juanita Ortega. She lives up in Santa Fe, and she was our previous photography chairperson. So she gives some tips that I didn't talk about, just on photography in general, so.
And where's that at?
It's at our district website, pswdroses.org. And then you'll see photography and just click on that and you'll see a picture of Dave.
Is there any video out there that shows how you frame? Because I know you showed it
Yeah,
beautifully one
mat
time.
and mount, well, there's different ways, and, there's two-sided tape, and there's photographer's tape, and, if you wanna reuse the matting and mounting, there's tape that won't stick to the paper. So, but just as long, it's like a hinge, you just make a hinge out of the tape, and there's little tricks to getting it, and be careful, don't damage your image. So I use a sock. So, anything else? Okay, that's it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Gotta get this fired up here.
And you're just gonna do it from that here, I'm gonna turn the mic towards you.
Sure, that sounds good.
Longhorn beetle. And it eats. Well, actually, it's kind of pretty, it's straight. It's got this long antenna. But it looks like I asked Baldwin, what is he goes, it's a longhorn beetle. Thanks.
Oh, there we go. Okay. I'll just talk from here, and then I'll show the camera setup later on, but basically to let you know what my background is. I'm basically a professional baseball photographer and have been that for about 50 years. And I got my start in photography just learning all on my own, reading Ansel Adams books. If you don't know him, he's the best black and white photographer in history, and just an amazing. And so I basically played with chemicals a lot in those days, and then when it came to digital photography, it seemed like a fad at the time, and then suddenly you had a program called Photoshop that you could use to make pictures real nice and sharp and everything. But anyway, over the years, I've shot 48 College World Series, I've been to 5 Olympics, and I've just had that background where I'm out there 12, 14 hours a day taking baseball pictures, trying to dodge line drives at your head, 100 miles an hour, so. But anyway, during all that, just to give you a background, that's why I have the expensive equipment. It's not because I really want to. I think I like Donald Dina's setup better, because it's so much easier. And who doesn't play with their cell phone? I mean, you go take pictures wherever you're going, whether it's the park or Saguaro National Monument or wherever you're going. But anyway, here's some of the things that I've found, and to me, the number one thing you gotta look for is light. Light overrides everything in photography. As far as equipment, I've been at different events where people have had over $250,000 worth of photo equipment. And I mean, it's insane, and here I am with my $10,000 worth of equipment, which is a lot. And but still, you know, I would outshoot them because I knew what I was doing, and they didn't. They would just have one camera on one base, one on another, one on, you know. But anyway, as far as rose photography, light is everything. And with that being said, you want to have a great background. Now, if it's any other color than a dark color, you basically want a dark background. That is something I really picked up from Dr. John Schaefer, who gave a class at Desert Museum. He's one of the top macro photographers in the world, where he's trying to shoot every cactus bloom in the world.
Wow.
And amazing, man. He used to be president of the U of A here. He was a chemistry professor, and it's just been his passion, photography. And he also, ironically, learned from Ansel Adams too. So, but he did it in person, not like me with books. But anyway, just, I want you to look at these photos and look at the light and see where the light comes from, what the backgrounds are on every one of them, and see if you see a common denominator here. So.
Oh.
These were all taken from your garden, right?
Yeah, yeah, and none of them are on the plant. I just cut them all, and I'll tell you how we did it in a second here, but yeah, these are all from our garden.
Oh.
But you see how all these roses pop because of the background? If you had a white background or something distracting, like Donaldina was talking about, if you have a telephone pole coming out or something, it wouldn't be as dramatic. And so it's just, that's what I was trying to get you to look at, keep the background. I mean, but if you had a really dark, almost black rose, maybe a white background would be better. That's about the only situation, but in every other case, it just really makes them pop like this.
Now, do you have an actual black sheet that's up there? or-
That's what I'm gonna show. I've got, matter of fact, let me, that plastic thing that's right there, Terry, basically, it's a sheet of black felt. That's all it is.
You prop it up around the rose bush?
No, basically, I bring it all inside,
Oh.
and, you know, the really nice light, yeah, that's what it is right there. It's just a sheet of black felt, and then I just drape it over a chair. It sounds like this is really high tech.
So all your roses are pet roses,
Yeah.
though, they're not on the bush?
Yeah,
Okay,
I always do that because then you can control everything.
yeah.
You know, there's so many issues going on with when you're outside, if it's not wind.
Wind, yeah.
Wind is the biggest, most difficult thing to control. And, you know, and then the light, really is only a couple times during the day that you want to even shoot outside. It's,
You're ready.
it's, you know, early in the morning where you have kind of that yellow, beautiful, soft light. And that's why I'm saying light is everything in photography. If you have that soft light and then you have a great background like that, that eliminates all distractions, basically.
No shadows.
Yeah, exactly. And you just have the only shadows you have, you know, this is basically shot in our hallway, where there's one skylight, because it's soft light coming through, and then the front door has two little panels that are clear glass on each side of it. That's just about 6 feet away, and the light's coming in from the side, so we have very soft light coming in from the side and from the top with a skylight, and then I have a chair that we have for the dining room table. I put that on, is the background on a big cardboard thing right behind it, where that drapes over both of them, and then that's what gives it that black background like that.
So none of that is artificial light?
No,
Lou, you entered this arrangement in a class, in a show, right?
no, I was just fiddling around.
No, the rain
You're
is.
practicing?
Yeah, all these, I've never entered any of these in a show, which is strange. Because we've had COVID, and I decided I'm gonna play around and see what you can do, and it's kind of interesting. I contacted Ray Martin from England, who is the ultimate, him and his wife, as you guys know him very well. You're always on Facebook going to meet him in Palm Springs. But anyway, I don't even know how they do their collections. I have no idea how they do them in their bowls that they have, so he sent me a little videotape how to do it. And so that's why I was fiddling around with these collections, trying to find out. I was trying different color combinations but anyway, that simple little setup. If you don't have a skylight, you can you know, there's another guy who's really, really good. He works for National Geographic. And I don't know that you've seen that series that he's done on endangered species or something. Yeah. Basically, he did, it's called The Great Courses. And for 24 lessons, part one is for beginners. explains how he captures light perfectly in those little setups that he has. And then part 2 is another 24, but it's about $30 for each one, and it's amazing if you want to look at stuff like that. But anyway, you got to have fancy equipment, and I don't know whether it's really worth it when it comes down to with everything that cell phones can do now. But again, I have to do that for business. But anyway, let me go to the next one here. Oh, now here's the equipment that you need, and I'll show this right afterward. You got to have it to make good rose photography. You don't want anything moving, so you don't want the wind blowing everything. And on the inside, you don't want your camera moving at all, so that if it's a low light condition, you don't want to be holding it in your hand and then you move just a little bit because it took a second to shoot it, or longer, you're going to have a problem. And then you have 100 millimeter macro lens. If you have a camera that is like that, that's the only lens you'll need for rose photography. You have many different macro lenses out there that'll take objects that look like they're, just the stamen of a rose. It's really tiny, you can get in there. But with the smaller lenses, from front to back, you have to get really, really close to the rose. And with 100 millimeter, you can be back about that far or even longer and still get it. So that's why if you're going to spend money on one, get a 100 millimeter macro lens, don't get something else. You need a tripod that'll keep that locked down so that it's not going to move at all as if you're doing it with your hands. So that's why that's important, because again, the low light levels, you might need to do that, and you can't move that camera. It's got to be perfect, just like you're taking lightning photography. You can't move it around even a little bit. And then the other key thing is called the cable release. It's just a cable that goes to the camera, and then you can be off on the side. I mean, even if you're clicking it with your hand, with your finger, the shutter, that can move the camera. So you want to have a cable that goes to it, and then you click that, and then it's absolutely perfectly still. It won't move. And so you have that combination of a great background, you have the roses that look good in there, and then you have perfect light that you like, that soft light from the top, and maybe a little from the side. And then you got to figure out the angle. Is it better shooting it from this way to a little bit on the right, a little bit on the left? It's funny, when you do that, you can find it so that the light is just perfect and hitting everything just right. And then the next thing is looking and seeing there's a big difference. Yeah, a lot of people just look at things and say, oh, that's a pretty picture, and they're not really seeing what it's all about as far as lighting. What's the background again? Is there a telephone pole coming out? Is there a big stem coming out of the background? And that's where you got to isolate the subject and try to have it so that, as far as I'm concerned, you blow it up so that it's as big as possible and not being in, there's places for the 9 quadrants that Donaldina was talking about. And it's beautiful if you have a sunset photo or something like that, but for this particular type of photography, I think trying to get, if you have one bloom, you want to have as much of the frame as possible in that. And depending on if it's an arrangement too, that's different. But if you're just talking about one bloom that is spectacular, to me there's nothing better than to have as much of the frame as you can with that. That's in absolutely perfect lighting. And so then you evaluate the light. If you're going to shoot it outside, you want either sunrise, sunset, or you have some artificial light inside. Because if you do it during midday, it's going to have these harsh looking shadows, and it just won't look good. But you see those 3 pictures on the left, they're the same photo. Basically the light is coming from the top and the back a little bit, and you see how it has the shadows in the front a little bit. And it's, for some reason, it's pleasing to the eye. So we went over the dark background, the camera settings. It used to be a thing on cameras that's called ASA. Now they call it ISO. Basically, it's a setting that allows you to get higher
Resolution.
There you go. And then on a camera like that, you can have either what they call large JPEG or RAW, and either one will work just fine. The only problem with a RAW image, it's called, a JPEG image is basically, it's got a number on it. When you play with it and make it better, it's it'll say something .jpg. Every time you work on that in Photoshop, the whole image degrades over time. So you want to change that to a TIFF image. Now I've got everybody confused about that. But the TIFF will not degrade like that, but in time, the JPEG will, every time you open it up. The RAW image is just the basic raw data that you have. Then you open that up in Photoshop and or some other program like Lightroom, something like that, and then you can change that over into a JPEG image or a TIFF image. But typically I change over all the, I usually in my camera I have large JPEG, and typically that's like 20 inches by 30, whatever it is, it's huge. And that's good enough for me, but there's a lot of photographers that only do it in RAW, camera RAW. And then they just have the technical data, and then they switch it over once they're refining the image into a TIFF image. So anyway, to make all this simple as far as on the camera, and what I've learned from Dr. Schaefer and others, you only have one setting on the f-stop that you need to even concern yourself with. Just start with F24 or the highest setting you can get. It might be F32, whatever the highest setting is, put it at that, because that'll allow you to have it most in focus. And you're not doing anything fancy where you just want the middle of the rows to be in focus and everything else blurry. Basically you're trying to get everything in focus if you can. And I would think, Aladina, do judges look for that creativity, or do they want to see everything in focus?
We'd like to see things crisp and in focus, other than if you're in the creative class.
Okay.
Yeah, and because we might take a point or two off if it's not in focus.
Okay. And that's the one thing Dr. Schaefer said. He said it's really fascinating when you're using a macro lens like that, and he does it from a scientific point of view. He said that whatever is in focus, basically you can focus sharply just slightly in front of that, and then that'll be in focus, and then the area behind it will be in focus for a period of distance. But it's not just that area that's razor sharp. When you have an F24 or higher, it'll have a larger area, and that's what, so anyway, just when you take a picture, if you have a camera, just try it at F24, and then you adjust the light after that. And remember, it's on a tripod, and it's not going to move around, and that'll make it really so much easier. And then with all this other stuff, then you just sharpen, you just razor, you get the focus so it's razor sharp. I do everything in manual, I don't do it automatic when it comes to rose photos. And then you can just get it razor sharp. With that sort of camera too, what it does is if you wear glasses like I do, it has a special thing right on the area that you look through the camera from the back when you're trying to look and see what you're going to shoot. And it allows you, it's got this dial that you can dial it so that when you're wearing your glasses, it'll be in perfect focus, which is really kind of cool. It really has helped me a lot, because I would be blind if I couldn't do something.
What brand of camera do you have?
That's a Canon EOS 1D. Basically, I bought it about 20 years ago, and I'm pretty cheap. But I mean, basically at the time, it was about $2,000. And I know it's expensive. You gotta look at them now. They're like $6,000 for just the camera body alone. And, but that'll take about 8 frames per second. I need that for baseball, so that's why I have that. But now the brand new ones will do way more than that, and the resolution is a lot better. But anyway, as far as again, I mentioned about manual focus, so that you can dial it in on the lens so that it's razor sharp, and then move the angle around. I mentioned that, and then all you need to do at that point is it has a light meter in there. You just change the speed so that it's 500, 1,000, or do it to 1 second or lower, so that the light meter goes right into the middle. And then you take a photo, and then you look at it on the back of the camera, since it's a digital camera, and see what it looks like. And there's actually a really cool device, it's called a Hoodman, where it'll go right over the back of that. You can see it reflecting there. It'll go over that, that's where the image is. You can put that over there, and then you can look through through just an eyepiece, and it blows everything up like it's a big old screen almost. It's beautiful, especially for the outside. It's really a great thing. And then you can see whether you need to adjust it to make the picture darker or lighter. And so depending on what you have, if I want to make it darker, then where that needle is here, I'll just have it go downward 1 or 2 stops, and then usually that does it. And when I'm happy with it, then that's great, because in the days when you had film, you had to make sure that you, a thing called, where you bracketed your photos, whether you did a little darker, a little lighter, and then you could spend a lot of money on photos or film. But this is the one way I just want to get my photos perfect, if I can, before I go even into Photoshop, where I look to see if there's any little dots or specks or something you need to take out. Okay, because I'm always after the perfect exposure, which is what I kind of became accustomed to when I was learning through the Ansel Adams books and through, if you have the perfect exposure, you don't have to mess around with it too much in Photoshop. And so I mentioned how to do all that, because I don't like to rely on Photoshop to, after you've taken a bunch of photos, why do you want to mess around in that program all night long when you don't need to? So that's just a touch up. And the great thing about Photoshop or another program like Lightroom is it allows you to sharpen it just a little bit. And then if I'm doing stuff for a newspaper, you have to adjust the colors a little bit so that, that's another story. But mainly for what we're doing here, that's really all you gotta do. And that's it.
Right.
So for now, I'll just show you over here. Just a little bit about the camera. Okay, here's what it looks like. Here's the tripod, and it's a big heavy-duty one. And then I've got the top of the tripod, which is heavy-duty. And then Dr. Schaefer showed me this thing. It was really pretty cool. What you can do with it, you can go 360 degrees if you want to. And easily, because you know, if you have a regular tripod and you go out in your garden and try to shoot it, it's a pain in the neck. It really is, trying to dodge this or that. But anyway, then this screws on here. Then you put the cable release right here to do it so that when you get it locked in, you're fine. And then basically you set it at f24, and then you focus by manually where you want it, and then you adjust up or down and sideways and all that so that it becomes a perfect shot in your mind. And then you do the speed the way that you want it until that needle registers right in the middle, and then you take your photo and then just see how it is, like I explained, and then you're set to go. So anyway, let me show you what that, I can find that Hoodman here. That's a pretty neat little gadget here.
What happened to lose cloth?
Okay, here's the Hoodman device I was telling you about. See how it's got kind of like a magnifying glass here almost? And then you just put this on the back of the camera. Once you have your image here, you just put it here, and then you just look at it. And then this does, just like the other thing, it allows you, if you wear glasses, you can focus it so that it works perfect. And then there you go, and then that allows you to either keep that photo or try another one. So,
It's just close enough bigger for you to see, is that the understanding of what that does?
yeah, what this does, here, let me show it to you. You see, basically, this keeps, if you're outside, it's really hard to see a digital camera in the back on the network, so this basically covers that area up so that you can see it. And then you see how, yeah, and Dr. Schaefer showed me this, I said, wow, what a terrific idea, because he does all this stuff naturally in the outdoors. But anyway, that's a neat little toy, and
I have a camera, but it's not really fancy, and it's really old, and it still takes pictures.
but that's pretty much it as far as what I do. I don't need to get into all the really highfalutin stuff that you can do, because I don't do that very often, because I keep it simple. And like I said, for rose photography, if you just keep it at f/24 or as high as that camera will go, and then you adjust the light from the speed, you just adjust that setting. And I typically, the ISO setting, which I try to keep it about 100 for rose photography. And so that thing that's really all you do. And then, so if you have a skylight in the house, something like that, that's very usually nice soft light. But anyways, anybody had any issues with photography that might be able to help with, or does this just explain the process a little bit? Yeah,
So many cameras now have a timer on it instead of a remote. Does it work?
it does, but normally with a remote, oh, you mean as far as it goes past a second, or, and then you
Yeah,
can
you
get
know,
on the
you
camera?
put it on there, time, and in 3 seconds it takes a picture.
Oh, yeah, that'll work fine too. If you wanted to do that instead of having a cable,
Right.
you could certainly do that, and then, that's a great idea. I mean, I've never even thought of that, but that's a terrific idea. Yeah, but as long as you have a cell phone or one of these, I really think you need to have some sort of a tripod so it doesn't move around.
That move, right.
Yeah, and because depending on the light, of course, if it's really bright light outside, and you know, I've tried stuff with, like that, I don't know if you saw that one, Abby's Angel, that red and white one, that's a miniature. And that one, there's a mini floor.
Mini floor.
Okay, mini floor. But anyway, I did that with a flash unit, where I had it connected to the camera, and I just did it freehand. And so sometimes you can get away with it with a flash unit, but there's a guy named Andrew Hearn from back east who has these unbelievable rose photos, and I asked him, how do you do it? Because he goes to rose shows and takes these great photos all the time. I said, oh, I just take that, I have a high shutter speed, I have a high f-stop, and then I use my flash unit, and I just do that, unless there's a lot of natural light coming in from up above, from the mall that we're in, or church, or whatever it might be. So, but yeah,
Well, I might ask too, why the 100?
because 100 macro lens,
No, the 100
ISO.
because I don't get much lower than that. You know, when I used to do photography with film,
with film, right.
I did a lot lower than that. I used Kodachrome
Yeah.
back in the, and that stuff was expensive. But anyway, what you would do. but
Back at the end of the last century.
Yeah, it was.
That's a long time ago. If you try to buy that now, I don't even know they can. I don't know. But anyway, essentially what it does is you can have an ISO of, 100's about as far as I go, because I don't want to get it. That's about the lowest I can get, which really makes the resolution really pop a little bit more. It's very, very fine. Whereas if you go up to 1600 ISO, which I do for a lot of night baseball photography,
Right.
it still will look really, really good, because I've got this big old lens, but it just comes out much crisper, and the colors are nicer, and I just like it. The lower you can go, the better, for me.
So if you could get an ISO lower than 100, would that be better, or?
I don't
Sorry,
know.
I just have a setting on my phone camera.
Does that go, have an ISO on it, or?
Mine does, and I can go
Wow.
down to 50 to 3200.
3,200, you don't wanna get it way up there, you wanna go down to 100 or,
Just found
that'll work good, but.
Okay.
The 3,200 is, basically that's for really low light conditions, like you're
Oh,
taking
okay.
night baseball photography or something, and the lighting isn't really good. And, but anyway, the lower you can get, the better to start out from, and then you leave that alone, and then you have it at f/24, and then you adjust the speed of the speed of it, so that it might be anywhere from, it's the lighting that I normally do is like, it's like, 1/3 of a second. And so that tends to work pretty well there, but again, you gotta look at your light meter to see where it is. And by and large, what I do is I come down about one stop, maybe even two, so that it lets even more light in, so it's more brilliant colors. But that's where you can start from, is having it right in the middle, and see what it looks like. And if that's still not pleasing to your eye, try it down a little bit further, and then the next one. And it's simple. I just have learned you don't need to second guess all this stuff and get all worried about all the different things that people have, and the cloud in my mind for years. I said, this is simple, why don't we just do this? Easy. But is there any other questions? I think that's it.
Thank you.